Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Danny and Owen. This is not going to be the most serious video you're ever going to see on this channel. This is part of the build-up to the the interesting fight that's going to take place between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Chaps, Jake Paul, he's been around a little while now. We've seen him fight boxers who haven't fought for a while. We've seen him fight UFC fighters, former UFC fighters. I think he fought a basketball player at one point, and we're now seeing him fight the legendary Mike Tyson, who is nearly 60. We're gonna throw some names at you. This is just a bit of fun and talk about kind of retired boxers and see how Jake Paul would get on, seeing as he is facing someone who is long retired. Owen, you're a big fan of the word retirement, so I'll start with you. We're going to go through a couple of names, and it's going to be a bit of fun. The first one we're going to discuss, Roy Jones Jr., one of the best fighters of all time. Someone who fought maybe longer than they should have done. Someone who actually had an exhibition fight against Mike Tyson a couple of years ago, I believe. If that fight was to take place, would Roy Jones Jr. be the guy to shut Jake Paul up, or could you see Jake Paul steamrolling him?
I think Jake Paul would probably beat him purely just off age. Um, Roy Jones Jr. is obviously nothing like he was as a pro. I just think even like the Mike Tyson fight, it'd just be painful to see because Roy Jones Jr. is one of the goats. Um, or he's just unbelievable to watch in his pomp. So to watch him against Jake Paul would be an absolute disaster. But I just think purely on youthfulness, like I literally think it's an age thing. If it was based on even still now, if it was based on Roy Jones Jr.'s ability, even at his age, I think he's still a better boxer than Jake Paul. And I think Roy Jones Jr. at probably 85 is still a better boxer than Jake Paul. I just think Jake Paul's age depends. It'd probably be over 8 rounds, and Jake Paul's just going to smother him. Just constant pressure. So unfortunately, I think Roy Jones Jr. would lose to Jake Paul, which is the most mental sentence I've ever said.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's a sad conversation to have, but here we are. Roy Jones Jr., who was still fighting late into his 40s. Danny, what would like the things? I know it's a silly question to say, but if I'd said to a couple of years ago, let's talk about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, that would have been a silly thing to say. And yeah, here we are. Jake Paul versus Roy Jones Jr. If that was to get announced for kind of early 2025, and you had to pick a winner, who would you pick?
Roy Jones Jr. The left hook still there. Draw out the lead hand, whip it over the top. I can see it, vision it now. I thought Roy looked good against Mike Tyson. Still some life left in the old dog yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a very different style to Jake Paul. I think Roy still got the edge of the footwork. I think, as I say, the left hook still looks sharp to me against Mike Tyson. In the 10-ounce gloves, I think Roy chins him.
Yeah, I think I would edge to agree with you, Dan, just because Mike Tyson's been retired a very long time. Roy Jones Jr. actually, although he obviously declined so much as he kind of continued and insisted to fight on, he was still fighting as a pro against fighters of a certain level. But you just, yeah, you don't know, and it's going to be really interesting. It is interesting to see what happens between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. What does actually happen there? Um, next fight we're going to talk about could rustle a few feathers. It's someone who has been retired for over 10 years, constantly kind of has made talks about coming back, has made comments about Jake Paul. Still looks like he could fight today. Still in fantastic shape. The Cobra, Carl Froch. I think I've not looked up his age. I'm going to say mid 40s, maybe late 40s. Carl Froch must be now. Danny, would Carl Froch would beat Jake Paul, wouldn't he? Surely.
I'm a massive Carl Froch fan, but I think it's a bad night for him. I think he would get cleaned out early by the problem child. I think his punch resistance looked to be on the way out in the George Groves fight. You know what I mean? Floored in the first round, obviously, famously in the first fight. I think he's been out of the ring too long. Obviously, he seems to fancy the fight. He's been too easy to hit. Jake Paul, much bigger than him, throws a lovely straight right hand, similar to a George Groves right hand, some could say. So I think as much as I love Carr, love what he done for boxing as a fighter, love Froch on fighting, I think he'll get ironed out early.
Yeah. Look, I think it's again like the Roy Jones thing. I wouldn't rule I wouldn't rule it out happening. Carl Froch has made comments about fighting Jake Paul. So you never know. Maybe it would he'd have one more fight at the Nottingham Arena. Who knows?
They're
Owen,
good views. The
yeah,
views would be
absolutely.
unbelievable.
I mean, I don't know how much both guys are making from this fight, but if you consider Carl Froch has been retired for a long time to have one final payday of a lot of money, I think surely it would be tempting. Owen, what are your thoughts on this one? Carl Froch still keeps himself in fantastic shape, so we can see. But yeah, how would him against Jake Paul? How would that finish?
I think Carl Froch sparks him out, and I think lays him out as well. I have to look at the only boxer Jake Paul's actually fought in Tommy Fury, and the punches Tommy Fury was landing. If you're going to let Carl Froch in those same positions, he's going to absolutely blitz him. I know Carl Froch's punch resistance has obviously gone over the years. He's taken a lot more damage off a lot higher opposition than Tommy Fury has, but I just look at that fight and I thought Jake Paul just looked bang average. And I just think someone like Kyle Froch, who's going to come to knock him out, I think he just lays him out flat.
Do you think that Jake Paul would retire if he lost to Carl Froch?
I think he'd have to. He's the amount of shit they've both chat to each other. I think Jake Paul puts himself in a position where people say the Tommy Fury loss is like, oh, okay, it's the first actual boxer that he's fought. Believe it, but if you can't have someone who hasn't been in the ring for 10 years giving it loads, saying what you're going to do to him, and then I honestly think he'd get ironed out. So he's done, dusted.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, I think it's slightly humiliating to have these discussions, but I just feel like we have to do it. We have to do it. This is going to be it's one of the biggest fights of the year, if you whether you like it or not. And I'm sure Carl Froch will be watching, commenting, probably probably doing some punditry work somewhere for it as well. So we'll see. All right, chaps. Got one more name, and then I'll let you get out of Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson land. Former WBC cruiserweight world champion Tony Bellew. Someone who again has talked about fighting. He was made comments on Twitter about fighting Rosansky, the man that Lawrence Okolie ironed out in one round in the last year or so. Has been still been long retired. I think that fight against Usyk must be 6 7 years ago now. Had a good had a good career, won his world title, made defense fit, was involved in those big nights against David Hay as well. Owen, I'll go back to you. What are your thoughts on this one? Bellew, look, I think he's still we don't know how much these guys kind of spend in the gym now, but what would your thoughts be on this one?
Jake Paul's going full Ben Whitaker style on this one. He's getting wheelchaired out of the arena. I think Tony Bellew just absolutely, it doesn't even see 30 seconds. I think the first right hand Bellew lands, Jake Paul's going to sleep. I think, obviously, like you say, I know, obviously, the Usyk loss. That was only what, 2018? So it's not actually that long ago in terms of, obviously, the style of fighters Jake Paul's been fighting. I think if Bellew's actually hungry and up for it, I genuinely think he'd just absolutely run through him and blitz him in 30 seconds.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a shout there. I think also to mention like Jake Paul obviously fights at cruiserweight, and I think for this to be more, well, I say a fair fight, for this to be a fairish fight, you'd have to expect Tony Berry to come back down, or at least kind of meet at a catch weight somewhere. Danny, do you agree, are you as confident as Owen as Owen? Do you think Tony Berry would win inside 30 seconds?
I actually do think it would be similar to what we saw from Ben Whitaker. However, I think it's only because Tony Bellew would quit against Jake Paul. I think he showed great heart against Alexander Usyk. You know, he keeps reiterating he was up at 6, could have carried on, but I think that hunger's left him long ago. And
Yeah,
I think just the younger, fresher man drags him into late waters. Don't get me wrong, I see where Owen's coming from. There could be a few sketchy moments for Jake Paul so far, but he showed a granite chin. I
mm,
think Bellew's power probably not what it was, and I think down the stretch, maybe Tony doesn't quit himself, but his corner save him for another day. I think.
yeah. Could have poor old Dave Coldwell throwing in the towel. We'd have to see. But I think one factor here as well, gents, is that if you are 45 or 40, you are not the same athlete or person as you were 10 years younger. And that's really what we're talking about here. And going back to the Carl Froch example, if that fight was to happen, we could be in a position where Froch is back in the ring and a minute in, we realize, oh no, this isn't the Carl Froch that beat Mikkel Kessler, knocked out George Groves. He's kind of beat Arthur Abraham. He's just that you're not that person anymore. In the same way, if certain, God, I'm not going to give examples of football players. If certain football players decide to make a comeback, at the age of 45, it would not be the same thing running down the wing. Final question before I let you go, chaps. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. What happens? Jake Paul's the favourite. Danny, I'll go back to you. Can you see anything other than the Jake Paul win?
See, when I saw like there was 14-ounce gloves, I sort of think like, what is this actually going to be? You just wonder, is it going to be like a bit of a, I don't know, like a pantomime where they're not really knocking each other out? In all seriousness, if they're both taking it seriously, like I do think Jake Paul will flatten them, and I think it'd be quite a bad watch. But a part of me thinks we'll just see almost as if there's this sort of like unwritten agreement. We're not going to go too hard here. We're both making a lot of money, you know, and then you know what that might look like. But as sick as this might sound, I hope it's not that. I mean, if you're going to do it, let's have it right and have a proper fight because I'm going to watch it. I know we can all have our opinions on it and how it shouldn't be happening, this, that, and the other, but I'm going to watch it. I'm sure you two are going to watch it. So I want to see a proper fight, but I worry we might not get that.
Yeah, look, I think this is worth mentioning to people that aren't aware. This is a genuine fight. It will go on their records. This is not an exhibition. However, I do kind of share that sentiment that this could be a battle of the jabs for 8 rounds. It's 8 2-minute rounds as well. It's not 12 3-minute rounds. So that's my thought. It possibly could just be a bit of a jump around. But we'll see. Owen, if say it's not a jump around and both men are there to fight, what do you see happening?
I think Danny's spot on, especially you mentioned like the 14-ounce gloves. I think it'll just be a Jake Paul points win. I think if you're talking 10-ounce gloves, I know he's 59, but we've all seen him on the pad still. If it's 10-ounce gloves, if Mike Tyson landed that right hand in the pocket, he's still gonna send Jake Paul flying. But in 14-ounce gloves, 8 2-minute rounds, realistically, no one's pushing the gas. I think we'll see a couple of hairy-ish moments where Mike will go to load up, and I don't think he fully will, just to make it seem almost as if he was 20 years younger, imagine what would have happened sort of scenario. So I think, unfortunately, we'll just see, like you say, Elliot, a battle of the jabs, and Jake Paul comfortably wins on points.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Look, we'll see what it's like. Obviously, we've got a fantastic fight on the undercard between Kate Taylor and Amanda Serrano, which is worth tuning in for, even if this isn't. Danny, Owen, good to speak to both of you again. Not a video to be taken seriously, but you never know. We could see Jake Paul versus Carl Froch in the future. Chaps, thanks for your time. As always, I'll speak to you again very soon.